So today we are going to discuss with the module first of public international law, that is nature and development of international law. In this module we have to study three subtopics. One is meaning and definition of international law. Another is theoretical basis of international law, wherein we have to see the natural law theory, positive law theory, Grotius theory, and consent theory. That how these theories are justifying the basis of international law, or how this theory become basis for the international law. And thirdly, we have to see historical perspective of international law, wherein we have to also see the codification of international law as well as work of international law commission in codifying the international law. So first we will see what is the nature, scope and basis of international law. So as already discussed during the introduction, that it connotes the sum of rules accepted by civilized states. International law is nothing but the aggregate or sum of rules which were accepted by the civilized states, either expressly or tacitly. Tacitly because of their conduct, expressly by entering into an agreement. So these are some of rules accepted by civilized nation, either expressly or tacitly, as determining or to determine their conduct towards each other and towards each other's subject. Now, subject we know, subjects are individual, subject means international organizations, etc. So, we can say it is a body of rules regarded by the nations of the world as binding on them in their relations with each other, in peace and wars, and comprises the right and duties of sovereign states towards each other. So, what we can call prima facie to public international law as it is nothing but the law relating the regulations between sovereign states or states. So, in a broad sweep and expanding concept and horizon, it governs the relationship of the people of the world, unbounded by the political and geographical constraints. And it is a law for mankind, irrespective of color, creed, relation, and political identity, political view or approach. So it is of universal application, we can say. Now, why it is developed? What is the why international law is needed, or what is the importance of international law? So, international law is required because any state or a country today, howsoever big, developed, underdeveloped, small, it is impossible for such country to insulate or segregate itself from the rest of the world and to pursue its policies, be it a social, political, economic, even external affairs, including military, that can be said to be solely in its own national or self interest. So, perception of what is one's national self interest is changing today. Even one's national self interest is depend upon the cooperation of the world. So, there is the resources in one state, but it lack in some other factors. Suppose one state may be an agrarian state, but another state lack oils. So the state having agrarian economy has to depend upon the state possessing oils. That's what the cooperation between the two states is required. So the result is that it must face reaction and interactions with the other state, people of the world, or even corporations. Therefore, the Nature and scope of international law is wide pervasive enough to bring within its orbit all activities of the state and its subject, because activities in one state may going to hamper the development in the another state or life of individuals in another state. So the man by its development, be it in science, technology, etc., had pushed the frontiers of human experience beyond his widest dream. And he reached literally to the spaces in the outer space, etc. That's what the Professor Friedman says, that international law is today actively and continuously concerned with such divergent and vital matters as human right and crime against humanity, in international control of nuclear energy, trade organization, labor conventions, transport control, or health regulations. Due to this, it is inevitable to accept the principles of international law for every nation. So even state, if decides not to be a part of international community, the its own for sake of its own development, it compels that nation to go and participate with the international community in today's context. So this can be said to be an importance of international law. Now we will move towards the definition of international law, whether the concept is defined and by whom it was defined. So take into note that international law is not a codified law. It is the already stated is a sum of rules developed on the basis of practices accepted by the nation. So there were no codified definitions. So if there is no codified definitions, we have to analyze the view of jurists on this aspect. So the term international law was first coined by Professor Jeremy Bentham in the year 1780, as it is synonymous with the law of nations, which corresponds to the French and German equivalent as droit international or droit des gens. Now, these concepts are in Latin. You have to go through this concept. There is no other way. So be it a part of memorizing certain words, certain names, like you memorize the names of foreign cricketers. Similarly, you have to memorize the names like Jeremy Bentham, Oppenham, Kelson, and several others that we are going to come across forth further. So he observes that. So we have to analyze the definition of international law given by different jurists. One jurist, Benershock, he says that the origin of the law of nations is nothing but the reason and usage and the evidences of treaties. He observed that reason commands me to be equally friendly to two of my friends who are enemies to each other, and hence it follows that I am not to prefer either in war. So the reason means the conscious self-consciousness of particular nation. So that is the instinct for development of international law. So we are talking about the natural law in other words. So next jurists who try to define the international law in a simple language is Lawrence, Professor Lawrence, the well-known English jurist. He defines international law as the rules which determine the conduct of the general body of civilized states in their mutual dealings. That it's what he covered, the general body of civilized states. See, again and again word civilized is occurring in this definition, what civilized states, and how these words is later criticized, that we will see in Oppenheim's definition. But here Lawrence says international law is nothing but the rules which determine the conduct of general body of civilized states in their mutual dealings. Mutual in the sense once they deal with each other, whatever rules they observe, those rules are nothing but the international law. And if there is this harmony in these mutual relations among independent sovereign states, it will causes rupture in their dealing. So their trade or other relations may be breakdown. Yes, those which are beneficial for both, those rules are nothing but the international law. So it is the rules regulating the conduct of states in their mutual dealings, be it hostile situations or pacific. Pacific means peaceful, hostile means coercive. In both the time, there were rules dealing with their conduct, and such rules are nothing but the international law. Now, the most famous jurist in international law and who define more elaborately and get criticism, suffered criticism, is the Professor Oppenheim. Oppenheim, you may pronounce in your own way, but remembered spelling. So Oppenheim says that international law is the name for the body of customary and treaty rules. So here he bring more clarity into the definition of international law as he covers customary and treaty rules. So he says international law is the name for the body of customary and treaty rules which are considered as legally binding by civilized states in their intercourse with each other. So he also used the term civilized states, but he involved the customary and treaty rules. So this definition is given by Oppenheim in 1905. But thereafter, even prior to establishment of United Nations Charter, so there were significant changes later took place into the development of international law since last 10 to 11 decades. Therefore, his definition was criticized on the basis of certain factors, certain aspects. Now you have to remember these criticisms suffered on the definition of Oppenheim. Hmm? Because there will be a question on the first topic, discuss the nature and development of international law. Wherein you have to write all these definitions along with the criticism suffered. So, this definition propounded by Oppenheim in 1905 suffered a criticism because on what point we will see. But what he included in his definition, customary and treaty rules and civilized nations. So it is generally recognized that now what criticism is suffer that we will see. First, it is now generally recognized that not only states but public international organizations have right and duties under international law. So first point of criticism which he suffered is the subject of international law. He pointed out only state as a part of international law and he was criticized on the basis that it is not only state but even international organizations are subject were covered under international law because United Nations itself came in 1945. However, he defined international law in 1905. That's what this criticism may be. Second, the term used by Oppenheim is civilized states is also criticized. So the criteria of distinguishing so-called civilized states was neither based on long history nor on culture. Which states are civilized? He never said. So even though China, 5,000-year-old culture, is not a civilized state as per Oppenheim, it was not included in the group of civilized states. Only Western states or Christian states were considered as civilized states because he focused upon the European Union only. And many Western jurists says that it is the European Union who introduced international law to the world. But whether it is correct or not, that we will see in historical perspective. That's what while defining international law earlier, number of authors emphasize on the civilized states. So here he criticized that not only Western or Christian state or member of European Union are civilized states, there were other, and the criteria laid down for civilized state is wrong. So at present, if we look in the present context, there were 195 member states of the United Nations, and it includes Christian as well as non-Christian states, and they were civilized. India is a civilized. So criteria to be a civilized is whether state is having constitution, democracy, or the pattern of government is established as per the constitution by any state, giving fundamental right duties to its citizens, having check and balances on each organs. These are the attributes of civilized states. So, civilized states concept of Oppenheim was considered. Third, he did not taken into account the individuals or other private persons like corporations. They also enjoy some right and duties under international law, because after Second World War, significant changes have taken place in the formal structure of relation of state, because this investment was made by the state, or even socialist pattern. If we took India into the central focus, socialist pattern were followed, wherein privatization as well as the state sponsorships were considered. So, apart from nations, individual and other non-state entities also played the important role into the international law, and they were ignored. Even international organizations already discussed. So, this third point of Oppenheim was criticized as he missed to covered into his definition. Now, the third aspect is he covered the rules relating to customary and treaty rules. So it is widely recognized now after the commencement of Statute of International Court of Justice. We seen that's what we discussed all modules initially. So you may have a reference to this, that sources of international law we will discuss earlier, wherein what are the sources we seen, but here Oppenheim covered only two sources, that is the customary and conventional or treaty rules. But Article 38 of Statute of ICJ provides for other sources as well, because the very conception of international law as a body of rules now stands changed, and earlier he called it as a body of rules, but it is not a body of rules, but it is developing. Body of rules in the sense it is exhaustive. Nothing is entered into. But international law is developing in nature. ICJ is delivering several decisions, giving advisory opinion. So body of rules is not a proper word. So because it is not static and inadequate. So like all living law, what we can call the international law as a living law, which is continuously interpreted either through ICJ or Permanent Court of Arbitration, several other international forums. They are contributing to the development of international law. That's what it cannot be considered as a body of rules. Even this point also he was criticized. Therefore, these factors were important while defining the definition of international law. So these all criticisms he taken seriously, and he redefined his concept of international law again. So thereafter we have to see what a new definition of Oppenheim is, or what kind of criticism he cured with, and define the new concept. So in his ninth edition, he defined the new definition of international law subsequently. Now he says international law is the body of rules which are legally binding on states. Earlier he stated considered as legally. Now he says legally binding on states in their intercourse with each other. These rules are primary. Now we come on classification of these rules. So these rules are primarily those which govern the relation of states. So first preference he given of course to the relation of state, and that is the truth. But he further says states are not the only subject of international law. So here he covered the second defect. And first defect he covered that states he used only, not civilized. So, but states are not only the subject of international law, international organizations, and to some extent also individuals may be the subject of right conferred and duties imposed by international law. Further, states are the principles of international law. States are primarily but not exclusively the subject of international law. And to the extent that bodies other than states, like international organization, MNCs, etc., directly possess some rights, power, and duties in international law, they can be regarded as a subject of international law, possessing international personality. So he covered international organizations, he covered individuals. He says that it is developing law and he removed civilized states. But one thing still he left, and again he was criticized. So he also covered individuals, even certain territorial or political units other than states to limited extents are subject to right duties under international law. So the above concept and definition of international law was given, improved, improved definition is similar to the definition given by Stark and Fenwick. But still he left behind one aspect that we will see in definition given by another jurist. So it is still difficult in one respect because it is still conspicuous for the silence regarding the principles of law recognized by civilized nations. In view of the foregoing discussions and taking into consideration the present state of international law, it may be body of general principles and specific rules which are binding upon the members of international community in their mutual relations. And now it includes state, international organization, individuals, and other non-state entities, that is MNCs. So the other jurist who define international law is Hall. He says, now these definitions are more or less similar, only certain words were replaced with certain other words. But the collectively, the meaning of this definition is one and the same. Hall says certain rules of conduct which modern states regards as binding on them in their relations with